So moving on to our final panelist, this is Dr. Nick Cammack, who's Senior Vice President and Head of the Tres Cantos Medicines Development Campus at GSK Spain. And one of the questions I wanted to ask Nick was to tell us a little bit about the research that occurs under Diseases of the Developing World umbrella and under the charity Tres Cantos Open Lab Foundation, because many people get these two entities mixed up, and I wondered if you could help clarify that to the audience.
Yeah, sure. So out in Tres Cantos in Spain, which is near Madrid, the capital, we have a drug discovery centre for diseases of the developing world, working on the kinetoplastids, malaria and TB. And in setting that place up, and certainly in the last few years, we've really thought how we can best contribute to the field, because clearly the pharmaceutical industry can contribute a huge amount. And our approach has been, and others as well now in the pharmaceutical industry, is to really try and take a different approach than you would be able to in the more commercial space. So from a GSK's perspective, all of these diseases are not for profit. There's little or no commercial return. So what can that allow us to do? What it can allow us to do is open up a lot more of what we do to share with the community. So for example, sharing data, sharing access to patents and so on. And I think as we set off in that vein, what was very clear, and a lot of the feedback we got was, you know, compound libraries are great, we can go off and test those. Some of your data, making that available is great too. But what we also want is your sort of drug discovery knowledge and expertise. So about 3 years ago, we set up what's called the Tres Cantos Open Lab Foundation, a bit of a mouthful. And what that is, as you said, Alan, is a charitable foundation. It's a UK-based charity. It's initially funded by 10 million, well, 5 million in the first instance, and now another 5, so 10 million from GSK. And this foundation funds any group outside of GSK who would like to come and work in GSK, in Tres Cantos, and use our expertise and our facilities to move their drug discovery project forward. They can apply to the foundation and receive funds to do that. So that it didn't, and the reason for the foundation was so it didn't seem like a clever way of GSK getting everybody else's ideas, because we don't have any of our own. We set up this foundation with an independent governing board of leaders in the field, and including representatives from our PDP partners. And they actually select and approve projects to go into the open lab. And those, I think what's really important there is that we're helping others without compromising their ideas. It's absolutely their idea when they get there. And everything they do in the Open Lab Foundation, in the Open Lab, is theirs to take home. So those are the sort of the difference. It's the same physical space, but the foundation is supporting academic groups, and we have scientists from around the world in Tres Cantos from different academic groups working on their own projects in amongst all this drug discovery expertise.
Yeah, so does intellectual property become a problem in this area? You know, academics often feel that they have bright ideas, are good targets, they give them to the pharmaceutical company, and then the intellectual property is lost. How do you deal with that?
So in this space overall, we follow the WIPO research IP principles. We certainly ask any group coming in through the Open Lab Foundation to follow those principles. And in our own GSK work and in collaboration with our PDP partners or others, we follow those as closely as possible, respecting what the partner might actually want. And there have been examples of fantastic possible open lab projects that have not been able to take place because the academic organisation didn't actually want to follow those principles.
Okay. Do you think that the open lab concept could be extended in some ways? I mean, although it's set up by GSK, you are looking to get additional funds in and other partners. How's that developing?
So as we've said, it was set up by GSK. It's based today in our facilities in Spain, but so there's always a strong GSK element to it. There is absolutely no reason why other companies cannot be involved and host open lab projects in their own facilities around the pharmaceutical industry. That would be a logical extension and provide another level of independence in some way from it being seen as a GSK.
So funds could be given to another pharmaceutical company.
Well, they're given to the academic investigator to then go and be hosted in the. So there's an in-kind element from the pharmaceutical industry.
Of course, yes. Yeah.
But it's not so significant.
Yeah. And are there any significant outputs so far after 3 years of operation?
So we started just to be fair, we started 3 years ago, and so 3 years ago now we had 2 or 3 projects. We're now at a sort of steady state of 10 or 12 cycling through. They're mostly very early. So what the groups want is to bring their new target or their new phenotypic approach and screen the GSK library and then take the hits away, take them home, and work on them further. So outputs, I think, early on would be publication, application and successful application for further funding from other groups to move those projects forward. But ultimately, the whole point of this is to find medicines for these diseases.
Yeah, and how do you deal with managing expectations? Because one of the aphorisms that Chris Lipinski always said to me is, first purge your project of wishful thinking. So how do you tell the academics, look, we've done what we can, and we don't think there's any further mileage in this? How do you deal with that? That must be bad news for academics.
So I think there are 2 possible outcomes. One is that there are compounds identified that both groups are interested in because they could progress from a drug discovery perspective. But then there'll also be the compounds, some of which have been talked about today, that are great for probing the mechanism, but they're never going to be drugs. Right. So we try and please one way or the other, but clearly in the latter, that would be the end of our involvement. They can take those molecules home, but they're not going to be drugs. So and I think also the interaction for those academic groups who've not had much industry interaction, I think it's a great opportunity to see how we have to make our decisions on what we move forward.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that's a very good point, that academics often really don't understand the complex implications of drug discovery and the pitfalls that you can run into. I mean, if drug discovery was that easy, how come pharmaceutical companies are still struggling to up their output? I mean, it's not an easy process, and academics and physicians need to understand that.